Good morning, everyone. This is a video we've been waiting to shoot for over a year.
18 months.
Why did we buy the barn? How are we doing with planning? What's the latest?
18 months since we bought the farm, and we bought the farm with zero planning permission. Was it a gamble? Well, we're going to give you a walk and talk and we'll let you know. But this is it. This is what some of you might not have realised. This barn here is home sweet home, isn't it?
No, we don't live in it yet.
One day.
As long as you're not pointing over in that direction, it's
no,
fine.
it's easy to start hoarding and making a mess of the place when it's a big empty building. But
we don't have any hoarders though in our family, so it's fine, isn't it, Tim?
Yeah, I don't. I'm a collector, not a hoarder. So this is the barn that we fell in love with, believe it or not, when we came to the farm first in, 2021, that summer.
Yeah.
And we'll show you why. We'll give you a bit of a walk and talk around the buildings. So when we first came to the farm, we knew it had a pre-app on, what would you call them?
The workshop and the parlour is what we called them.
And like the
ridiculous
sort of
shaped
stable
buildings,
type areas.
which would not work even. They would cost so much even in a renovation. Plus they don't have a view. We wouldn't. It was good to know that there was
something here, so we knew whatever happened, there was at least some possibility. Well, there was support for something here.
But realistically, the more time we spent here, we've decided that we wouldn't even attempt to build that as our house.
And they certainly got potential to be other things. So that's these. You've probably never seen it from this point of view, but that's the big stone barn in the background. All of these. So that's the workshop and the stable and the parlour where we're kind of converting into that little farm shop area.
But this was always what we wanted to convert.
Well, as soon as we saw it, we kind of thought...
And we got some people over before we bought the farm, or at least before the contract
started some conversations, didn't we?
To get some idea as to whether it was a wish or not, because you thought it was too big to begin with, but then we realised that actually it is within the...
possible. So it's all to do with Class Q, and maybe if we walk... Oh, we can't go through that. We see Natalie.
Yeah.
So Class Q is permitted development, which is... Let me scoot around this side, which is basically like...
What?
Just say you're in the background, otherwise wrong arm.
Ah, I see.
So permitted development, what is that? That's a bit like you being able to do a loft conversion or put a conservatory on or convert a garage or something like that if you've got a house. Well, when you've got a farm, you can do something very similar as a prior approval, permitted development. And one of those things is changing the purpose of a building, the use of it. So you might want to change like a small barn or agricultural building into an office or something like that. But also there's a residential change of use, so that's called Class Q. And it was kind of, I think they probably did it thinking it was going to be used for like brick and stone buildings, but it was so loosely termed when they came up with it that you could actually use it on a barn like this.
And if you look online, you can see so many amazing examples of barns like this, which have been converted.
Let me just get me exposure up.
Barns that are in a lot worse state too, shall I mention now, because that will become crucial later on.
So this video is all about our kind of issues around planning permission and basically what we've had to go through to date, or at least the first half.
It's good to point out that we did allow for there being no planning and to spend a lot of money on planning, because we would have had, the cost of this, if it had planning, would have been £200,000 more than what we paid.
Probably.
I think.
And what happens then is if you get planning if it's a landowner or a farm owner, they tend to try and get planning put through on different buildings and then chop it all up into little garden-sized chunks. And we wanted land with a build, and that's quite hard to come by.
Yeah.
So the route we took was to, I guess, take the risk on, but the reward's higher.
Yeah.
So let's go through there, because that's literally the gap is the reason we fell in love with the barn, and I'll follow you.
What else?
So Class Q, if we walk and talk, Class Q basically means that you can convert a building as long as it meets a certain set of criteria. And one of those criteria has to be a certain size, or the size of the converted dwelling can only be a certain size, which is 465 square metres. This barn is bigger. It's 550 or something like that.
But there is another clause that says if it's in more than one dwelling, then you can kind of configure
You can add them up.
Yeah.
So you can have a combination of what they call large dwellings and small dwellings. A small dwelling is up to 100 square metres, and a large one is up to 465 square metres, which is a huge house. What we realised...
And you can have up to 5 houses, can't you? Or is it 8?
You can have up to 8. Yeah, the large dwellings can only add up to 465. You can't have 3 at 465. But either way, we had some conversations with the consultant architects, and we realised that we could split this up. So we have our main house and 100 square metre.
Well, or a farm annex.
On paper, it's actually a separate dwelling, but it's basically an annex to the main building.
Yeah. Do you want to show the view?
Yeah. So this, obviously, we've got all the smaller buildings, but they just don't have a view. So this is where, on the day we came to view the farm, this is kind of where we pressed our face up against, and the kids' slider, and looked out. And obviously, that is what sold it for us.
Well, that's what made us think that this is the barn we've got to convert.
Yeah.
Because we want that view every day, rather than round the back, which you just see this barn, if even from those buildings.
So that gave us the starting point, which was it might still be possible, but there's another little bit of that criteria that you have to meet, which is it can't have a listed building. It can't be in the curtilage
of a listed building.
Because there's a listed building here and others around, we thought it was a no-go. So we actually bought this farm knowing that we couldn't, or thinking that we couldn't do a Class Q, and we would be doing a full application. And it just so turned out that after having more meetings, that this is outside of the curtilage officially. So although we bought everything, it's got its own access. It was built after a certain point in time, 1948. And according to Historic England, this is not part of the curtilage of that. There's a natural divide. It's far enough away.
And we can see that, like...
It's obvious now.
But it became a real point in our first application, didn't it?
We had to...
That was one of the things we had to prove very quickly.
Yeah.
Even though, we had thought we covered it in our
But because that was one of the things that they said initially it's not possible because of, and then obviously we could go back in. So we used a consultant, and that was worth the money, right? No, we don't think we could have done...
Yeah, we wouldn't have known what we were doing without one.
It seemed like a lot of money, and you think you might be able to suit yourself, but actually someone taking what is just a plot of land or an old building...
They know all the policies, all the law
getting
bits.
Permission on that, they add so much value.
Even putting it together, like...
Yeah. You miss one thing, and
Yeah.
So all the back and forwards goes through the consultant. So we had our first application...
The other thing to point out now is that our local council is different to a lot of people's council.
Should we walk that way? Yeah.
So, look, if you're looking to do this, do not come to our local authority. Go to somewhere nice.
Yeah.
Because ours are known for being sticklers, and especially they don't like Class Qs. They even said to us during the first application, we don't do these. Can you please just put this in as a full
we
app?
don't like these. Just take it out and pull it in as a full app.
Yeah, which is also silly.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
and the other thing to mention is we looked at Class Q because this building now is actually quite substantial compared to the sort of steel frame barns that they now are really anti-Class Q on. And what I mean by that is we actually have solid walls here.
Yeah.
And there's walls all the way around. It's not just like an empty, non-sided Dutch barn.
It's structurally sound within reason.
Yeah.
Even the roof's all
So it's all enclosed, and that's one of the things that they're trying to tighten down on all across the country now.
So
people were taking advantage of it.
Yeah, so we put our first planning application in, and we had lots of correspondence with the council. She was pretty good.
They weren't too bad. We thought it was quite proactive.
Yeah, they kept asking questions and wanting to clarify stuff. So our consultant was doing all of that, so it seemed good.
There was a lot of educating, which sounds like we know it all, but we don't. But our consultant had to treat the council as a bit like planning for dummies, unfortunately, because they were questioning all sorts of stuff because they didn't know it. Because we were pushing the boundaries on all the sizes, we actually left, in the far corner, we left 2 of the bays as an agricultural store. So we ended up...
At one point, they even said something about the sizing, and we said, they said, oh, it's just too big for one dwelling. And we said, look, the first line of the whole application says permission to convert barn for two dwellings.
So it's just, you're constantly clarifying stuff, but not wanting to insult. Anyway, we were working through all the stuff, and they raised issues on ecology, and they kept on measuring the building wrong. They kept on coming back. It was, our architect had done it really accurately. It was 462 square meters or something. They came back and said, oh, it's 650 square meters, and they were measuring voids, and they were measuring agricultural stores and stuff into the main footprint, and it was just frustrating. But by the end of that one, they then asked for an extension, which was just to clarify some things on the ecology and a couple of other issues. And we went off, got the ecology, or we were just about to get that back, and then 3 days into that extension, on Friday afternoon, bank holiday, they just rejected it out of the blue, which was frustrating. We possibly knew it was coming. And we set ourselves...
We were still hoping.
We were. we kind of gave ourselves that first year, which would have been kind of February to February, thinking that's a good amount of time to get something through. Anyway, it wasn't to be. I'm trying to think what else it was rejected on. So we did have the ecology come back, but they'd already rejected it by that point. Another point was the mezzanine, which basically we were putting in bedrooms on a mezzanine level. And they said the mezzanine was too big. Turned out that regulation is only linked to commercial mezzanines. So again, there were all these little things that we felt they were getting wrong, or our consultant was having to constantly give them case studies and
But we learned a lot.
We did.
We moved on to our second application pretty swiftly, changing all these things, adding all the details that they needed, getting another ecology report, and the structural report
change to the design.
So in the second application, there was some discrepancy whether the patio, which we had cut out in between these two sections at the end.
Is it in the shot? Yeah, it is. So these steels, we kind of did the whole design based on our simple minds of thinking, well, the steels can't move, so we kind of use those to zone the building. And this area here, so this one and this one,
we're going to be our patio. Covered or uncovered? We weren't that fussed, but covered to begin with. And
we actually asked the council about that, and they said, you can't take the roof back in that area, even though Class Q conversions all over the country. I get bitter on this. No, sorry. I mean, there are people who manage in other counties to get Class Q on buildings like this that are just completely open all the way along, and then they get permission to take the roof off and put new slabs in. Like, we were having to we weren't even allowed to render the block work. We couldn't replace like wood.
The building a little bit bigger.
Even though in the literature you can replace like for like.
Yeah. But anyway.
But not here you can't. Anyway, so we wanted to make that a patio, but leave the roof, leave the walls, but take out these two short bits of bay. And for a while that was fine. They didn't have an issue with it being a patio as such or anything like that.
But they then talked about it being to be internal
because it had a roof.
Because it had a roof, even though it didn't have two sides of the wall missing. But so they didn't like that. They didn't want us to take the roof off, like Tim explained, even though we'd have been happy to do that to make it more of a patio and outdoor space.
So that, I mean, it was just something we had to work, and we were like, oh well, if there's a difference between getting something and not getting it, then we'll do it. But, so that meant on the second application, we had to remove that amount of square meters from upstairs.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Which meant losing bedrooms and everything. But we worked with that.
But we also got more garden because that wasn't classed as outdoor space.
Yeah.
Because you only allowed the floor space of the inside as your garden.
The converted building, yeah. So if you had a 200 square metre building, your lawn or garden area, including parking and everything like that, can only be the same size. So.
And you have to have space for 3 cars to turn around. And
Yeah, there was quite a lot on the highways in the first one. It's now 3:30 and we still heard nothing. And I simply don't know why. Why would they do that? Just trying to be awkward. So, arguably, in some respects, if it runs over, if we haven't heard in, I guess, an hour and a half, end of the working day, we kind of default to having it. That's a really sucky way to celebrate. So anyway, I'm still refreshing the page every 5 minutes. I'm sure Joe's doing the same back at the house. Evening all. We've got some positively rubbish news, but also it's a nice evening. So
what it is.
yeah. Once again, we are met with had some banging heads against walls with the planners.
10 minutes before we were due we haven't heard from them in weeks, like months.
No, before their deadline, which is exactly what they did last time. 10 minutes, 10 to 5 on the expiry date. Issued their rejection for the planning. Pretty hideous stuff.
And more annoyingly, it's stuff we would have been happy to sort. But they said in their report that at the beginning of the process, we weren't open to change or something like that.
There was an ongoing discussion right at the beginning about size, because we've got an area which is a covered patio.
Yeah.
Basically because we weren't going to destroy, remove a section of roof. We were just going to leave it overhanging the patio in the corner. They want to call that indoor living space, basically the same category as our bedrooms and living rooms and stuff like that. So because the building's so big, we need to basically, they're saying we need to remove that amount from elsewhere in the building, from upstairs or whatever. And we there was a conversation that went on, and then they appeared to have accepted, the conversation and left it. So it is a bit of a grey area, but because they hadn't brought it up again the first time around, they brought up any problem that they had.
In hindsight, we should have double checked that they were okay, I guess.
Well, we could have chased and chased, but
that was like
they'd added it
reason
to the
not to continue showing any other issues, I guess. But everything else seemed to be.
In all honesty, compared to last time, there's very easy to sort. It just means we've now got to go through the whole issues again of either resubmitting.
We feel like they're really easy. We hope they are.
Yeah, should we explain their roof over? So they had a problem with the roof overhang, and instead of bringing it up during the planning process, we could have spent probably half an hour. It would have taken for our architect to change that or explain it and put it back. This is what it was all about. So you remember back in February, March last year, Duncan came up and scanned the whole farm, and with a laser it picks up on all the dimensions, so we've got a really accurate existing elevation that was used, and then the design was done off that. You can see here on this corner that in the storms last year, just after we bought the farm, a piece of barge trim blew off, and it's even still down there on the floor over there. And the new roof in the new plans and new elevations comes out to the same point as the old roof with the same trim, but they saw that this bit happened to be missing, because obviously that was picked up on the original laser scan, and deemed that we were extending our roof by 100 millimeters, and because of that was 10 centimeters. Yeah. So because of that was against planning, because we have to work with the existing dimensions, and that was enough for one of the rejections. There were 3 issues. One was the covered patio, which we've explained. One was that, and the other one was existing ground levels. Again, what happened is, it's mainly the other side, but the laser scanning had picked up piles of rubbish that had been left there. You can see that there's still a pile there. And piles like here.
But it was all the way along.
Yeah, because there were tyres and stuff.
Yeah.
So they said that because we were removing that's engineering works, because we were reducing ground levels to match doorways and things like that. All of that could have been solved by a walk around, a site visit. Sorry, let's move away from the pigs, winding them up. Whereas there was no site visit, not a proper one at least. The lady who came, our planning officer, came and put a sign up on the gate. And
turned up on our security camera so we could see exactly what she was doing.
Yeah, and she basically walked to the corner of the barn. She came as far as this bit of fencing there.
Yeah.
And she looked at the barn, she took a couple of photos, and then she went. She was here for, was it about a minute?
And annoyingly, Tim was just the other
I was walking up from the field, because I was like, I'll come up and meet her and actually discuss it, as you might hope, as human beings. Anyway, yeah, so she was referring to things that obviously she hadn't seen. Maybe we were just too precise with our initial scan of the building.
Onwards and upwards.
Yeah, so I mean,
we've received this news better.
In reality,
eaten a lot of chocolate.
We said at the beginning a year to get planning would be good. We're not a year yet, and you know, we've been talking.
We've got a lot to be grateful for.
Planning.
Blue pigs.
The planning consultant, the planning lawyers are all like this. They've got themselves in a right pickle here. Definitely appeal. It's a dead cert, but an appeal takes a long time. So
and Tim's found out that you can appeal at the same time as putting another application.
Yeah, as has John. Thank you, John, patron. Came in.
You've got our back, guys.
And suggested something similar. Essentially, we could do a new plan that concedes to all of the issues. Well, basically just sorts out a gutter and the covered patio bit, which we would have to remove some of the area from upstairs, which isn't ideal, but it's fine. We could then put it in, and we know at that point, providing they come up with nothing else, that would go through. We then can have that approved, but hold out for the appeal on the actual design that we want. See where that goes.
Yeah.
And at this point, all of these applications, we were keeping the outside, but restored and redecorated. But the roof covering was going to be replaced like for like. We were going to use steel roof. No, from the beginning we were always going to replace the roof.
Sorry.
Yeah. Because that's just an asbestos Big Six sort of corrugated roof. And they never raised an issue with the roof being replaced, I don't think, or not to any extent.
No.
So that's kind of fine. And in a lot of Class Qs you can, change the roof like for like, as long as it doesn't get any higher. And one of the reasons for rejection was also they said our roof had got higher. Because... Turns out that end you've got a hover flying. One end of this building is 50 mil or something like that higher than the other. It's probably dropped a little bit. Over 25 metres, it's fine. But they've taken a figure from one end for the before and another end for the after. So although we said they were identical, they quoted in their rejection that we'd increased the roof on the ridge roof height at 50 mil on one end of the building. Like, why would you do that? Anyway, the frustrating thing is it's inconsistent. So all of this is stuff that has passed in all over the country.
And the difference between the first and second application was we heard nothing.
Yeah,
we didn't have any communication, and we thought, oh, this is good because
there was a bit, but at the beginning
we've told them all their answers and that they're really happy. Like that's what we assumed. Stupidly.
And even our consultant was like, well, no news could be good news at this point because they're happy, or they're just flat out. And they've got 56 days to answer and give one way or the other, so they tend to leave it to the last 2 or 3 weeks before they start looking at it.
Yeah.
If it's, in our case anyway. But we just had when she was trying to reject it, she even said to our consultant, "I just need it off my desk. And I don't like doing these Class Qs."
One of the factors that they said in their rejection was that we didn't communicate with them, or we hadn't
that was so frustrating.
And that was really hard because we were like, well, we would have communicated. We didn't realise we'd rubbed her up the wrong way, or our consultant had.
I don't know if they had. Yeah,
exactly.
I don't know. I did speak to a few people, and they said that could have just been a cut and paste type paragraph that they put in. There wasn't a willingness to. But we would have changed anything during that process. If they'd said there was an issue with ground levels, we would have said, oh well. We'll show you, or we'll just not change that, or something or other.
We'll put a few steps inside in our kitchen.
Yeah, but then exactly, it has to be inside.
Oh dear.
So anyway, that took us to that point, and we then realised we would have to take a step back and change a few more things, and get a bit more advice, which we did. Jo wants to show off her lovely wildflowers that she planted, because what else can you do while you're waiting for planning? It's just plant trees and flowers and
pretty sure
build the cabin.
Yeah.
We filled a year. I mean, look, when these things happen, you look back and you realise that, man, if we got planning straight off the bat, we wouldn't have had... Should we sit on that log? Because my arm's going to fall off. We wouldn't have had chance to get the cabin finished in time. So we would have had to rent nearby or all this sort of stuff.
That would have been okay, but I think we would have had more... internally there would have been a fight between us, because I would have been like, well, why is the cabin not ready? We need to finish the cabin, you know, blah, blah, blah. Whereas actually it was us joined fighting against the council, which is better for our marriage.
And right at the beginning of this whole process, I thought, stupidly, like naively, I thought, wouldn't this be a good opportunity to like show what's involved in the planning process and maybe do a bit of filming and talk to the council, probably not on camera, but kind of go through it and how it all worked. I mean, we're doing it now in retrospect, but it's not positive. I just thought, oh, this would be a really interesting way of showing what's involved in putting a planning application together and all this sort of stuff. But now, I mean, I'm glad we didn't even contemplate that idea, because you've got more spiders in your head. Because it was a horror show, really. Yeah. It was just, frustrating more than anything. It is the consistency that we found was the issue, because you go one county either side of us and you can see so many case studies where they've like demolished half of it, put balconies in, all within this Class Q, which is just, I don't know, it's just frustrating.
It's great for them guys.
It is.
But
and the other thing is, we used a consultant from a neighbouring county. They didn't have the same inside knowledge, not inside knowledge, but they didn't know how the council were with these sort of buildings. And I think where we are now, working with a different consultant, I think we learned that now. Mm-hmm. Just how different, you can't do a same application in two counties and assume it's going to be received in the same way. It's not the end of the story, because we're still in the middle of it now. We've got things like appeals and new applications to put together. But there is a second half of this story, which we're going to shoot soon, when my arm's out of rest. And we will explain where we are at this point in time. Yeah. But we are a little bit closer to making that overpriced empty cowshed.
Not the end yet, though.
No. But making that our dream forever home. So that's where we are. If you've got any questions, leave them down below. If you are just intrigued in how a building like that could ever resemble a house, then maybe just Google Class Q barn conversions and you'll see, you get the idea. They still have to remain agriculture looking on the outside, but remember the whole inside. It was an oak frame mezzanine that I was going to build in there, and there are lots of different ways you can make a building like this. Wow.
I quite like the idea of it being not great looking on the outside, and then people open the door and be
quite simple and understated on the outside, and then oh wow, I never knew it would be like this.
Don't judge a book by its cover was kind of my Don't judge a house by
I think
its door.
What probably sums it up, and the frustration of when you end up talking to someone dropping off building materials or a neighbour or whatever, their main frustration, like to unite with us, is the building's already there. We're not putting a new building in the middle of open countryside. That's a frustrating thing to get your head around. So that was a dairy. How many cows are in there? 80 or 90, I think it was. So at some point, not too far back, that had 80 cows in, 24/7 the lights were on in there. Noise, the lights, open end, all this sort of stuff.
We still have to say.
Yeah, when it came to our bats, obviously there's no bats living in there, fortunately. But for our ecology, we were allowed, was it one external light in the patio? Whereas tomorrow I could go out and buy 80 cows and turn all those lights on again and they couldn't say anything because that's the current use. So there's just really frustrating things like that. And same with changing some wood cladding for new wood cladding, but exactly the same. And so, what's the underlying word? Frustration. And screaming goats.
Are definitely feeding it.
Okay, we shall leave it there, but like I said, any questions, leave them down below, and it won't be long before we get around to shooting a follow-up video and we can let you all know. But there we go. It's going in the right direction, put it that way. Thanks for watching.
Remember, if you can, don't do planning.
Buy a nice service plot with planning. And we'll see you next time.